thing. Well, I was in here with Dave earlier and he said.
This meeting is
Being recorded, okay. All right, Zach Cronin, Assistant City Engineer for Portsmouth. I'd like to thank you all for coming. Joined city staff by Tyler Reese, Associate Engineer, David Fosis, Construction Engineer, and Peter Rice, DPW Director, and joined by CMA engineers Phil Corbett and Josh Bouchard. We're here to talk about the Union Street Sewer Separation Project. It is required by our consent decree with the EPA and DES to separate the water and sewer on Union Street.
Stormwater, you mean?
Sorry, stormwater, yes.
The water and the sewer are already separated.
Yes.
I don't think it's-
Sorry. Apologize.
This water chase.
Maybe you should rewind.
Yes. So the yes, the drainage and sewer, and while the road is open, we will also be replacing the water. Water on the line, sorry. And at this time, turn on the presentation and turn it over to Phil Corbett.
Good evening. So yeah, we're I don't think we have anyone else in Zoom, so we're primarily presenting to you and whoever's going to watch the recording. So tonight we did our introductions and talked about who's involved. So I think we're past that.
All right, technical difficulties. You think I know Zoom by
There you
now?
go. And then our agenda for tonight. So go over the purpose of the meeting, the project limits, the purpose of the project, what we've done to date, look at the schedule, and then primarily this meeting as we move ahead into the conceptual design is to get information from you and understand what the issues are for residents and make sure we incorporate those into things that we need to do as we start to really look at the design. So that's primarily, we're not quite at a blank slate stage, but pretty close to that. We're really looking for any issues or concerns or questions you have tonight so that we can consider those as we move ahead. So right, again, tonight's meeting, explain the scope of the project, solicit your concerns, and then also just talk about, right, one of the components of our next steps is doing basement surveys of residences. So going into homes and evaluating where your sewer connections are. We have to make some changes with when we replace the sewer main and do the separation. We need to make sure and understand that works and understand if there's drains in the basement or sump pumps and other things that accommodated or separated or whatever else. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. So the project limits, and there's a map up here too. We can look at that after the meeting if there's anything else you specifically want to point to. But in general, as Zach described, the main objective of the project is to separate the sewer and drainage. So in order to do that on Union Street, these are the limits of the affected utilities. And that's primarily what's driving the project and the limits of roadway and sidewalk reconstruction and everything else. So that may change a little bit as we do the basement surveys and start to do our investigations, but generally, it's Union Street, Austin Street, and then a portion of Cabot Street, and then we'll be doing some work out on Middle Street to reconfigure some sewer services likely and make our connection down to Miller Street. And sorry, before we leave that, so right, there is some color coding on there. So that's there's kind of the purple area that are houses that we know will be affected by our redesign. We got to make sure that works. We actually have to raise the sewer a little bit in that area. So we want to make sure we can serve everybody by gravity and still do that. And then the whatever that other color is, orangish color, are homes that we would potentially reroute the service that are going, a lot of those go out the back of the home now. And so we'd be looking into rerouting those either into Coffin Court or Middle Street. And we just need to understand what's going on there and how we might be able to achieve that. So that's the project limits. So right, purpose of block project, and we've got to separate the flows, which that achieves reducing combined sewer overflows. and that's required by EPA and DES. And I just talked about reconfiguring those backlot services as we can, so we can get rid of services that are going across other people's properties and don't have great access to. And the replacing all those utilities, the water mains and services to the right of way. Same thing with the sewer mains and services, except for the ones where we had to reconfigure in the home, then that would get entirely reconfigured as part of the project. And then replace the storm drainage, so make some drainage improvements throughout the corridor. And then look to incorporate some LID, that's low impact development stormwater treatment. So as we can, and if there's some opportunities, it's difficult in urban corridors, but if there's some opportunities to provide some water quality treatment, we would do that as well. And then once all that's done, of course, reconstruct the streets and the sidewalks. So this graphic's just kind of showing, if you don't know what a combined sewer overflow is. So generally, right now, we have the combined sewer and drainage pipe that's accepting sewer from homes, it's accepting drainage from the street catch basins. And when that gets inundated, it doesn't have the capacity to all go to the wastewater treatment plant. So that's what's called a sewer overflow. And that's when you get discharge of that untreated. So that's what the reason that all these are getting separated is so that we can just direct wastewater to the treatment plant, separate out the storm drain. So, right, we talked about will be just some of the key items we'll be focused on, and a lot of stuff that most people care about will be reconstructing sidewalks. We know there's a mishmash of things going on up there, and there's trees and inconsistent sidewalks and not ADA compliant and all those sorts of things. So at the end of the project, the goal will be to have consistent sidewalks throughout the corridor, reconstruct those so we got safe passable routes that meet ADA requirements. And then of course, fixing the drainage. There's some areas now that it's an old drainage system and things have changed, and there's been a variety of paving going on out there. So we will look to clean all that up and improve drainage. There's a lot of driveways and sidewalks that don't drain well. So all of that we would look to improve at the end of the project. Assessing the trees that are out there. There's some trees, and you're talking about your landscaping, right? We will look at what will have to be impacted from construction. What are the condition of the trees? Are they in good health, or should they be taken down and replaced as part of the project? And then what do we do to supplement those and have a good variety of landscaping and trees at the end of the project? So all that will be part of the assessment and come up with when we develop the plan. And then, of course, one of the other challenges of this project that's unique is just Coffin's Court. And because it's so narrow, trying to reconstruct water and sewer in there, the proximity of houses and spacing constraints in there. But that's the goal, is to get utility service into Coffin's Court and get rid of some of those backlot connections. So one important item is trying to determine the roadway cross section, and this is a section here that has been implemented on several of these neighborhood projects that have been done previously. So right now, we kind of talk about our curb to curb width showing up there, that 28-foot dimension, which is kind of high behind the control panel, but the width from curb to curb of the paved road is about 31 to 33 feet. And a lot of these have ended up with a 28 feet curb to curb, which gives you a little bit more flexibility with providing a real grass strip and consistent grass strip with landscape areas, making sure you can get a 5.5-foot sidewalk in there so that can be accessible and maintained in the winter. And also just helps with connections to homes and those sorts of things. But it would be narrower than what's there now. And that's something that, we'd be happy to hear folks' input. It's hard to understand what that really means, but in this case, you could just go on the east side of Middle Street and look at Union Street on the other side.
Do you want questions now or just?
No, we'll talk. Let me get through that and but keep that in your back here. So right on the east side of Middle Street on Union, go over there, that's what we would be proposing to do. And we can kind of- yeah, next slide. There you go. Right. I forgot we had that in there. So, right. Before was very similar to what you have now. And then they reconstructed that section of Union Street. And now you can see sidewalk on both sides. In this instance, there was only enough room to have a grass strip on one side, but before there was none. So that's kind of, if you want to get a sense of how narrow it is and what it feels like, there is several roadways, you know, particularly throughout that neighborhood, that's what we would be looking at.
And this is currently the 28 feet curb to curb on the south side of Middle on Union Street. That's currently what it is.
So work completed to date. So we've done site investigation, which included getting the entire topographic survey of Union Street and surrounding areas within the project limits, and getting all the utility pipe inverts and things like that. And then we've begun the conceptual layout of the utilities primarily so we can understand you know, what the impacts to people would be and what we need to really get out of the basement surveys. And then we need to get through that step before we can move forward again. And immediate upcoming work would be again doing those basement surveys. And then one of the other things that we will be doing is geotechnical investigation. So that's borings. You can kind of see fade in the background there. It's just a truck drill rig. So we would be doing a couple things, kind of understanding what the roadway, the gravel conditions and soil conditions and depth of groundwater underneath the road, but also understanding particularly where we're relocating utilities, what the depth of the ledge is, because that's important in understanding costs and getting information to the contractors. So that will probably be within the next month or so. There'll be a drill rig out there for a couple of days, just open holes, and they'll go back in and have that done. So, right, yeah, I think I've talked through most of this, but basement surveys, identify configuration of the sewer service, basement drains, do you have a sump pump or floor drain, and help us identify the plans for homes where sewer service needs to be reconfigured from the back lot to a street connection. And what to expect on the next slide. So there's a two-person team. They'll have a safety vest on and identification. The first step is they just go around and knock on doors and try to get into homes that where people are home. And if no one answers, they'll leave a little door hanger. No one's required to let them in. If someone has a concern, we can deal with that. And then if it you know, is a particular concern, we can figure we can work out something with you. But some homes are more important than others. Homes that you know, particularly where we need to reconfigure the sewer service, we need to understand what's going on so it works. But that will generally be the plan. And I think the next couple slides is just mainly for when we post it up on the web. If people wanted to go through and look at kind of what they're looking for, you could look at that. I don't think you can see that here, but that's what's in the basement survey. Yep. So
And this presentation will be posted on the website as well, so you guys can take a look at these.
So schedule moving forward, they're going to start basement surveys next week. We're really looking to try to get that work done in February. It'll take a couple weeks, and then borings will probably be late February, early March. And then concurrently, we'll be working through the preliminary design, you know, February through May timeframe. And so right now we're kind of gathering information, coming up with these conceptual designs, and then once we are pretty far along with that and have some ideas about the layout of the utilities and what the street's going to look like, we would present that before we kind of finalize the preliminary design, make sure there's nothing else we need to adjust. At a second public meeting that looks like April, May timeframe, and then wrap up the preliminary design once we get that second round of feedback, and push through for the final design with the hopes of getting things approved to bid and bid to the winter, and kind of hit the ground running in the spring of 2023. So that's probably one of the more important concerns is when people will be out there. And so there's the EPA requirements to get things done, I think, by October of 2023. So they'd be looking to get going in spring. So there'd be construction throughout the spring and summer 2023 to get that work done.
One thing to note, this states that basement surveys, they begin next week, but we're looking to continue them through to the end of February, beginning. Next week.
Yeah. Worded that better. So, right, first public meeting today, we'll have the second public meeting in spring. There is a specific web page on the city's website, which is at that link. So I think it's live if you pull up this presentation or search for it. There'll be information posted up there, and I haven't checked again, but there will be, if there's not already a place where you can enter in your email to sign up for notifications on the webpage. So we'll be sending out some updates. And that's the bottom is just a little snippet of what that looks like. So yeah, it should be Union Street and Willard Ave sewer separation. And one thing I didn't mention was tonight we're focused on Union Street, and we split up the meetings because they're really separate areas. We are proceeding with both these projects, Union Street and Willard Ave, because there's some efficiencies in the information gathering and design and things, but they really are kind of separate projects. So yeah, that's the reason why there is two, but they are going at the same time. And I think I got through it all. So yeah, if you have questions here, and I don't know if there's anyone else online now or not, but start with the audience.
Four things from Jim Boss.
Yep. I'm gonna
So
do the share, and we could. All right. So,
we do have two attendees online, one with some questions. So shall we go ahead with the McMahons? Lisa, you want to ask her question? Let me see, make sure that I can let you talk. Okay, you should be good.
Okay, thanks, Stephanie. Yep, hi, Lisa McMahon here. My husband and I own 179 Union Street. It's at Union Street at Coffin's Court. And I know it's not an historic neighborhood, but it's the John Coffin House. It's the historic building. In that it's never been touched, and it's still got all of its components, including the sidewalk, and never significantly changed. So I guess my first question was, when you mentioned the sidewalk width, would there be any plan to preserve, if you have to disrupt the brick sidewalks that are kind of historic with some of the old buildings? Is there a plan to try to preserve that type of, I don't know if you want to call it frontage, because I think, back in the day it was part of the property, but it's probably city property now. That's my first question. And then the second question is just around parking. We have 5 tenants in this house that was made into 3 units, many years ago. So 3 units, 5 tenants. I live on the West Coast from Portsmouth, but I'm not in town. And I just want to make sure my tenants are, properly taken care of, and that they have parking if there's an issue, because 3 of them out of the 5 actually use the street for parking.
Sure. Yep. So first question about the sidewalk. I know the city has, a defined limits of where brick sidewalk goes and where it doesn't. I know there's instances where there's some special exceptions, but I think in general, these projects end up replacing with concrete sidewalks unless you're in that specific corridor, which I don't think we're in for any of this. So we can certainly investigate that comment further, but I think in general, unless we're in the kind of brick sidewalk area that's set forth by the city and defined, then we end up with concrete sidewalks.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you or understand what you were explaining.
Oh, sorry, yeah, so there's defined limits. The city has a plan that defines the limits of, here's where brick sidewalks are required, and here's where, if we do replace a sidewalk, they are replaced with concrete sidewalks. We are in the concrete sidewalk area. There can be special exceptions to that, but I I don't know that we can promise that, but I think in general, that's the policy of the city. And then if there's reasons to reconsider that, I think that we can certainly talk with the city staff and see where we stand. But that's the general approach, is my understanding, is that
And oftentimes we can save the brick and, you can use it in front of the house, or you can use it on the front side of the sidewalk. There's different ways of doing things, but really we're after that ADA accessible flat sidewalk situation in the neighborhoods.
Okay, and will there be additional opportunity for individual owners to request or, be part of that process of deciding on whether a particular area is going to be disturbed, the historical original brick will be disturbed or not? Like, I'm just asking for any way to
It
participate.
is certainly going to be disturbed. There's really no way around it.
I'm sorry, I apologize, I couldn't hear you.
Sorry, it's the masks. But it'll need to be disturbed, Lisa. There's really no way around it.
Oh, they have to be disturbed is what you're saying,
They do.
for every home,
For every home in the neighborhood, yes.
okay? The extent of disturbing it is just really the question, like, can we have someone put it back if it is, and that sort of thing or not? That's,
So what I said is possibly you could have someone put it back on your property or possibly in front of the sidewalk. You could use it as decorative instead of having grass. We've done things like that, but the actual sidewalk situation needs to be the consistent concrete sidewalk.
oh, I see. All right, so I'm feeling I'm hearing, to be sure, I don't want to belabor it too much, but so I understand, you're saying that really anything that's on this street is going to be, the sidewalk is going to get ripped up and it's going to become concrete for all of
Yes.
these.
Yes.
Oh dear. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for clarifying.
And then, right, your second question, we shouldn't be affecting the amount of parking. So the parking supply that's there today, it might be reconfigured slightly with some curb adjustments, but in general, we're not taking away parking on either side of the street. So it should be a similar amount of parking supply.
Typically during construction, parking is limited during the daytime, Lisa, so we typically ask residents to make sure they move the cars off the street by 7 a.m. And then when the contractor is done, usually at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they have the option to park back on the street overnight. Or they have to move their cars in the morning so that we can do our work that we have to do.
Okay, and that's just kind of standard for any construction area. I just want to make sure our tenants are prepared for whatever is coming and they're not getting hit blindsided by it. That's all. So sounds like they can just move cars as needed. The street itself won't be the problem. It'll be the sidewalk and getting in and out of the front of the house. Correct?
Yeah, this is a significant project. So, and especially where you're directly adjacent to Conference Court, there'll
Yeah.
be some additional work going on because you're a corner lot.
Yep.
So you should expect there's going to be some inconveniences and they're going to be unavoidable. But we
And-
endeavor to work with the tenants, to work with the homeowners so that they're informed and they know what's going on. And it usually smooths the waters pretty well.
No, and I appreciate that. We have some really nice tenants. I care about them, being able to have their lives relatively undisturbed to the extent possible. And, as a landlord, I have responsibilities to them. So just want to be sure that the area is going to be okay. It's going to be safe. And I'm 3,000 miles away. So off of Coffin's Court, we have a tenant it's such an old historic, I keep using the word historic, probably misplaced by mistake, but it's, it's old. And her door opens right up to the street and it's an alley. So I don't know if there's going to be, I just like to know if there's going to be any issue with that, since you're speaking specifically about the corner that I'm talking about. The area well, I'm sure.
I do, Lisa, I own a house right around the corner from you. So,
Okay. Yeah, sure.
At times during the day, we're going to be installing utilities up Coffin's Court. So at certain times, and it's not going to be the whole job, it's not going to be every day, but there's going to be a couple of days where there's going to be disruption to that door. But we will coordinate with the people that live there
Okay.
so that they know what's going on, they understand. And, we chat back and forth so that everybody's on the same page. and things aren't unexpected. She's gonna know they work very linearly. So, you know, if they weren't up to her door yesterday, they're probably gonna be up to her door tomorrow. You know, that's
Okay.
just the way that the nature of the construction is.
Yeah, but if she's working kind of business hours.
You know, these projects, this neighborhood's never been reconstructed. The houses are from the 1850s, sound right?
1829.
1840. So, you know, most of these houses had, you know, when these pipes were installed, there was no indoor plumbing yet. So the pipes that we're replacing were basically storm drains. Then they converted to use as indoor plumbing as well. So that's how old these pipes are. So every 150 years or so, we have to do one of these projects. Next year is your year.
Bring it on.
All right, so I have a question. Forget the flower one, because, I mean, that's what I want, but that's my personal thing. And I'm sure I'd have a heads up when you guys would be coming around to it. You got my attention when you mentioned the roads would, I like the idea of it, the, you know, sidewalks, and I think brick is pretty, but honestly, safety wise, it's much safer to have that concrete, yes, it's ugly, but. I heard the streets narrowing a little bit. That's gnarly in the wintertime. In fact, I think, Peter Price, I've talked to you before, I was lobbying to get Union one way. Because if you go down our street right now after that big storm, cars on either side, it's tough getting in and out of the driveway alone, and like, I'll make sure, I'll zip around the block so I don't have to go down the larger stretch of Union. Any thoughts of revisiting a one-way?
So, couple of thoughts.
I won't tell you why.
And we do this, I mean, we do this all over the city.
Yeah.
So we recently had a Bartlett Street meeting too. So one of the things that reducing the street width does is it slows the traffic down dramatically. So, but we will take another look at that. We'll make sure that the width that Phil is indicating here is workable with the snowbanks, so that everything kind of works. The snowbanks are around usually, what, 6 weeks on the
It's
winter
only
most of
from
the
the winter.
time?
It's really just the winter that's
Right, and
dangerous.
it's usually January and early February, right?
Yeah.
So we try to make good decisions on street width based on most of the conditions, understanding that, you know, January and February sometimes a little tough. But narrowing the street like that does have a significant slowdown effect on traffic. So it's oftentimes worthwhile. What Phil's trying to say, the other point he was made, is kind of subtle, so I'll say it again, is when we pull the curves into the street,
Yeah.
we have more room to grade the sidewalks, make everything nice and ADA accessible, and have everybody's driveway kind of flow down the street. When the street gets wide like
Yeah.
that, things get kind of like steep and nasty and kind of like the way they are now.
No, I like,
So by moving the curbs in, you actually, and there's certainly a lot of give and take, right? We try to make really good decisions on these things, and every street's a little different because your street gets different traffic than Cabot Street does. And it gets different traffic than Austin Street does, so every street's different, and you have to treat every street as a different street. We try to kind of interface all these things and come up with a situation that everybody's gonna love when it's done. Because the traffic's going a little slower, everything looks a little bit better because we didn't force it.
I'm all for that, the slow, the
Yeah.
not forcing, but we have a lot of rentals on our street.
I
mean,
understand,
we have a 4-car driveway zone, we're fine,
Yeah.
but. I mean,
I understand, there's a lot of cars in the street, and that's why we need to look at that and just make sure that that's gonna work.
one way, maybe parking on just one side of the street.
That's not enough.
So.
Not enough parking for one
There
side.
won't be enough parking.
Okay,
The
just
question
throw
of
it out there.
Right, the question of one way, is something that could be considered,
Okay.
would not necessarily be considered as part of this project.
Okay.
It's more of a question for parking traffic and safety. So if that is something that, you want to request, that gets into the queue, and get discussed.
Well, one little section of Union is one way,
Yes,
so.
And it used to be two-way
right.
back in the 80s, yeah.
So we've got a number of questions from John Ragonese. I'll have him ask them himself. Go ahead, John.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I was trying to do it in the most efficient way by just writing, but hi, Peter. Thank you for sharing your screen with us. This is very welcome. So we have the house, the blue house on the other end of Coffin's Court. The son of the Coffin on the other end built our house, the Edmund Coffin House. And a number of your pictures, at least at the beginning, at least in the presentation, showed our sidewalk in the house and some other trees and issues on Cabot. But I only saw one sort of graphic that described, you know, the sections that are going to have replumbed sewer lines to the, you know, to the Coffin's Court and everything. But what I don't see in that drawing is any work being done on Cabot where those pictures are being depicted. So I'm wondering, is there a different drawing? Is there a larger scope of work that is on Cabot that is not just sewer line? I'm just trying to understand the context of those pictures, yet the sewer diagram.
Yeah,
Zach,
yeah,
flip that to the-
yeah,
to the
so,
right.
so John, the pictures were just representative pictures and may not be entirely site specific. As you know, we probably took those pictures before even starting any of the project and understanding what exactly the limits are going to be, which still to be exactly defined in
Keep going.
on Cabot's.
Go
on
back to
Cabot Street.
the,
In the overview.
Okay, so go. Well, the reason why I'm asking, I'm trying to get that sidewalk fixed because it's caving into
Yeah,
the
no.
road.
Yeah, I understand. So it will depend on where we have to end up with the work that we need to do for the utility. Again, the utility work is the driver of the project, and it's basically where we need to do utility work. We will be replacing the limits of the street and then kind of wherever it makes sense beyond that. But right now, as best we can tell, these are kind of the project limits, so that it could be outside of what we're doing, that sidewalk right there.
So therefore, the water line work that is between Austin and the end of that sort of extension off Middle, that has already been done?
No, not necessarily, but it's not a combined drainage and sewer through there, which is the main objective. So
Okay,
the combined
Okay.
sewers are on Union Street and part of Austin Street.
okay, so it's separated at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. All right, I understand.
so you can see from the graphic that's on the screen right now that they're proposing to replace the water line, I believe, through there. Is that-
Yep.
I
Through
don't. see
Coffin's
any-
Court
On Coffin's
Yeah,
Court,
Austin
yeah, but
Street.
and
But
Austin.
out on Cabot, there's nothing. But
Right.
those sidewalks and the trees and whatnot were on Cabot. Okay, well, you
Yeah.
answered my question. It's possible, but at this point, the primary scope is around the water line footprint. The other note I just wanted to make, just in terms of a comment for your design people, is as you go down Coffin's Court, ours is the first house with the little slanted driveway, as you can see on this diagram. And then you have a red barn behind it that is depicted as a replumbed sewer line service area, which there's no habit. That barn is not a habitation. You know, there's nobody living in it, and it's not even a separate lot. So is that just sort of like an overlay error that might be not necessarily meaning that it is going to be sewer?
I think that has to do with us needing to gain more information, and the reason we're doing the basement surveys is so that we can iron out details like that.
Okay, yeah, no, I understood. I mean, I wondered if that's what it was. I just, you know, the others had a lot number as you've shown, and that didn't. I just wasn't sure what the rationale was. And then honestly, I can't quite see my other questions, Stephanie. So I'm trying to remember what the last one was.
So Zach, if you want to unshare, I'll get the chat back.
Oh, yeah. So this was just more of a general question because, you know, that Coffin's Court used to be a private road in the way back when the lots were 50 feet wide. You cut off, 12 feet was cut off. So that, you know, in theory, that road is only 12 feet wide. There's a number of houses, and one was described earlier with the doorway right on the grade of the road. How generally speaking are you thinking the design will potentially be, or are we not even in that phase yet where there's a sense of will the elevation go up or go down? And how would you be protecting like foundations that are literally, were built and designed when the road was private?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It's certainly, that's a really important concern, is the constructability and how we get utilities up Coffin's Court. Constructing near old foundations in Portsmouth isn't something that's new. And there's a lot of precautions you can take. Coffin's Court is particularly unique just because it is so narrow. So there's going to be special requirements for that construction to get that done, and we certainly haven't ironed all that out yet. It will be entirely ripped up, the pavement will be, and we'll look to replace it, to improve it as best we can when we put it back, but it'll be repaved when all the utility work is done.
Okay, thank you. Just one quick follow-up. Because it's narrow and because they're old structures, I'm not even convinced a fire truck can get down that alley. Partly because, the backhoe that comes through to plow it has hit the secondary service wire a couple times by, not with any consequence, thank God. But is there any thought about the electrical utility that runs down that Coffin's Court as well, in terms of making sure that everything's done while you're in there, and either raise it or lower it or put it underground or whatever? I don't know. I'm just
John, one
curious.
of the things that we have to do for constructability is oftentimes, once we figure out what we need to build, then we figure out how we need to build it. So there are many projects that we have gone through and raised the wires. We've gone through and jacked everything up. We did that we had to do it on Chapel Street. We had to do it on, what's the street off of Chapel Street? Sheaf Street. We had to lift the wires 4 feet to get the equipment in there. So this is something that we can do, that we've done before. And there are ways to put the utilities in, and there's ways to remove ledge hydraulically that doesn't involve pounding. So there's things that we can do, and we will get to that point before we hire a contractor to specify, certain methods of construction to make sure that things don't get damaged and that we do things properly. We've done things like this before. Luckily, you live in a city that's difficult to construct in. We have these kind of problems all the time, so.
Yeah, no, I didn't mean to think that you weren't going to be prepared. I was more trying to prepare myself. So
No,
thank you very
I understand.
much.
I understand. Yep.
Thank you very much. This is very informative. Thank you.
So Lisa had a follow-up question.
Stephanie, we get somebody else talking first?
Go ahead, let Lisa go.
Am I going?
Go ahead,
I
Lisa.
guess Stephanie.
You're
can-
on.
Okay, thank you. Just as a conclusion question, or I should say, first comment I had to make was I had the same issue as John did for a different issue. The plows going through, I had a tenant let me know that our stone in the backyard was just completely dislodged, a kind of a sidewalk stone that's allows them to get to their own entrance. So I don't know if on a separate matter, the Department of Public Works can help us with something like that, because it completely, there's no way anybody could pick up that, and it just completely dislodged the masonry.
We're writing it down.
Oh, what's that?
We're writing it down.
Thank you. I'll follow up offline, but that was an issue my tenant asked me about the last early January storm. And then the other question I had in summary, just so I prefer to make sure my tenants are well informed, and I know you guys are doing a great job, so I'm clear on what I can tell them now, because I'm looking at your timeline and it says borings are starting in February generally, and all this stuff is just February. So
Yeah.
can I just tell them that we're on February 1st today? So can I just tell them that they will expect to have interruptions, or is there a day that, it's going to start no earlier than, and between 7 a.m. and 4 p.m. They could expect workers to be, potentially blocking entrances and to tell us.
The
if-
borings are gonna be very, very, minute.
Yeah, the borings are just 2 days of work out in the street. That won't impact.
That won't affect them.
Yeah,
Okay,
The impacts will be when the real construction starts in 2023.
oh, okay, I'm missing the boat here, sorry, guys, I thought you were actually gonna be blocking sidewalks and ripping up the brick in front of the house, starting this month. And
No,
I'm misunderstanding you, okay,
Now, Lisa, these projects take almost, as you can see, a year to design. They're very complicated.
right, okay,
So,
sorry, I misunderstood and thought it was starting imminently, it's the borings that are starting and.
The one thing you could do to help us is to let the tenants know that we were going around with the basement surveys. Those basement surveys are, and I can tell you as a construction guy, the most important thing, most important evidence that we gather for the design. They drive the design, and if we don't know, if things are in houses that we don't know about, it oftentimes can be very expensive later on for us. So the basement surveys, it can't be emphasized enough how important they are. We need to get into the basements, we need to know where the gas lines are, where the water lines are, what size the water lines are, what type of material they are, where the sewer leaves the house, what size the sewer is. All this material, all these things are very, very, very important.
And Lisa, I believe Christine Berger has reached out to you on scheduling a time.
Yeah, thank you. I was gonna say, Zach, you reached out to me earlier and I saw that today, and thank you so much, because I didn't know this was happening tonight until you did, so I didn't notice it, so we will give you guys any information you need. I'm trying to be thorough because I'm not physically there. I have family in town that can help let you guys in, that sort of thing, so we'll work it out for sure. I just want to make sure I know what's going on, because I can't. be-
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yes,
Basement survey. Is it as simple as we just need to understand what you have? Or can it get more radical to the point of, gee, you can't have your sump pump where it is now?
nobody's gonna tell you where you can and can't have a sump pump. But we wanna know where your sump pump is in the house, and here's why. Later on, when the design is done, and we're actually constructing things, chances are you're gonna have some kind of drainage connection for your house. So if your sump pump's on the right-hand side of the house, and the contractor puts it on the left-hand side of the house, because he doesn't know where your sump pump is, then you gotta pump it all the way across your basement to put it in the right spot. But if we know where it is, we'll put it in the right spot for you. It'll be right outside. So that's one of the reasons why we just need to know. We're very interested in getting all the sump pumps that are connected to the sewers offline. That's, very important thing, is, because the groundwater, it does stop in July and August. But a lot of times it goes for months and months and months, and those sump pumps are running. All that water is going to the sewer treatment plant, really, for no reason. So, as residents, we're all paying for that. You pay for that through your sewer fee, but it doesn't get actually paid for, because it's kind of like, it's not metered water. So we all pay extra because of those things. So it's just kind of, it's good housekeeping. We'll give you a drainage connection outside, so that, water in your basement, you have a place to put it, then where it's supposed to go.
Awesome.
Yes, sir.
Hi, we're at 20 Kaufman, so looks like we're at the beginning of your re-plumb. So obviously excited to have you guys come in to check out the basement. Right now, it currently comes down on the side closest to 30, straight down the front building, cuts its way down, and then all the way out the back, which you guys have sort of identified. When you guys redo that project, how much of that expense maybe falls back on the homeowner versus what's covered by the city as part of the project, just to get an idea of what impact we might see financially?
So generally speaking, we cover that in the construction. We're rerouting the sewer. You're not doing it, we are doing it.
Sure.
So, but we'll have an agreement that you sign, says you allow us to go in your house, we'll hire a licensed plumber to go through, we'll take care of all the permits, all that stuff, and we'll reroute it to wherever it's gonna go.
Great.
So if we're changing something and it's not your fault, usually that's the way it goes.
Yeah, just thinking about stuff we might have.
Now, that being said, if you have a steel water line that's about to blow out of the ground, that's your responsibility to change it out, but if we're 2 feet outside your foundation, when it's happening, then, you're looking at, maybe $300 or $400 to change out your water line.
Sure.
Where if we weren't doing it, it might cost you $7,000.
Right.
So, some of the costs are on you, most of it's gonna be on us.
Sure.
We'll
Okay.
try to work with everybody as we go, so that it really just, everybody's really happy, that's what we want.
Yeah, no, that
Happy
sounds,
homeowners.
yeah, no, that sounds good. I think we were just, what do we need to potentially plan for? We've talked about coffins being narrow and you guys have talked about there's certain, days in scope.
Yeah.
Not gonna hold you to it. When you guys have to tear up coffins, what does that look like? Is it a couple of weeks? Is it a
Armageddon.
couple of months?
Armageddon.
Yeah, no, we, that's why,
That's
Yeah,
pretty good.
we understand that that has to happen. And we appreciate that. And I'm not, again, not gonna hold you to it. Is that
The
a
best,
couple weeks, couple months kind of thing?
no, it's usually 2 weeks, I'm gonna guess.
I'm gonna tell you it's a month and a half.
Right,
Yeah,
It's gonna be a nightmare.
which we would expect.
It is.
Yeah.
but it'll-
I don't wanna undercut it. It's a very
This
difficult
is why
road.
your wife doesn't let you talk?
This is why my wife said, don't talk.
Yeah.
No, I lose sleep over Crawford's Board.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a tough, very narrow, difficult construction.
Sure.
But Dave's right, we've done this before, we know how to work around buildings, but it's still challenging.
Yeah, right, under normal conditions, it's about 300 feet. The sewer won't be that long, that would probably be right, but given that there are gonna be special and difficult construction conditions, it's hard to say until we know exactly what they're gonna do, how long it's.
Yes.
So we'll do a pool, over under, we'll throw 5 months in, and we'll see who makes the money.
All right, two more for you, sorry.
and of course, when we're talking about that, we're talking about 2 different phases, right? We're talking about them actually digging and putting in utility.
Yep.
Then they'll backfill that with dirt, it'll probably stay like that for a month or 2. And then when they're done doing all the other utilities, they'll come in, they'll pave everything at once, you know what I mean?
Yep.
So it might be under construction for a couple of months, the chances are, it won't take that long, quite a while.
Sure, okay. We have a porch off the front that essentially sits right on the street. I'm assuming there's gonna be some sort of impact to that.
Hopefully not.
What happens if it does?
Do you think about renovating?
We have thought, but we were certainly waiting until this project sort of made its way through the neighborhood, so. Just understand, again, as the project goes on, just that'll be one of those questions we just, again, just try to get clarity on so that we can plan for it.
So the
Or if you
way,
need to take it off, can we put it up exactly how it was, or are we gonna get, oh, no, now you don't fall
No,
into
no, so
Okay.
the way we write contracts is the contractor's responsible for all of it. Okay, so they have all kinds of insurance, we make sure they have insurance. We videotape and take pictures of everything before we start anything. And then, God forbid, something gets damaged, they're responsible to fix it.
Okay.
And, we would work with the building inspector to make sure you get expedited and all that sort of thing, because,
Sure.
nowadays, the building inspectors are very busy. Right, so we have, so,
Yeah, and again, we appreciate,
so that's the
complexity. We appreciate the complexity going on there. I think you had mentioned that the parking on Union is certainly a concern. You guys said you're gonna look at that. The only other thing maybe there is at the base of Union and Coffin, the telephone pole that's there on the corner. I don't know if there's a possibility to move that, relocate that. It makes getting in and out of that side certainly
Sure it
challenging,
does.
so.
right, and obviously it's there because the wires have to go up the street, so it can only be in a certain spot.
Yep.
But we can certainly look at it and make sure that if we do have to change the pole out, it's certainly no more egregious and hopefully a little less.
Okay, great. Awesome. Thank you.
My only concern at this time, listening to everything, is when you repave the road, the grading, if it's not graded correctly, we have like a little berm on the end of our driveway, as well as web.
Hopefully, when Phil is done designing this project, you won't need little berms.
Okay, but if I.
That's
need
our
one,
goal,
Otherwise, it
right?
goes right into our backyard. and
Yeah,
works.
no, I understand,
Okay.
so.
And what's your address?
30 Coffins.
Oh, you're in Coffins.
It's a troubling road.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's usually the best crowd, but this last storm, I'm like, wow, there's actually snow at the front of it. I've never seen that road
It may have
not
been,
look
We have
it
a-
may have been a different operator.
We have a new plow guy on our route.
I mean, they did a good job, but it's
Right, he
usually
did a great
amazing.
job, but it's just like,
Yeah, they did a good job.
it's just a little, you know, we
Yeah, it
have
is, it
a
is.
bunch of snow that we didn't have the first one.
Did they use a new plow? I feel like they used a different.
We use a different truck.
Which I think
Yeah,
was
so
very.
that's what you're saying, is you're seeing a new guy.
Yeah.
You know,
Poor guy.
No, their neighborhood's way worse,
Really? The back
way
road?
worse, trust me.
So when will you, it'll be a ways out to know the final, spacing of the road and the.
Yep, we're gonna look at all that stuff, so we're basically in what we call engineering study, right? So we're going through, we're figuring out all the basement stuff, we're figuring out all the utility work, where the limits of the project are gonna be. One of the things we'll look at is the street cross section. When we come back in April and May to have this second public meeting, we'll have a recommended option.
Cool,
Thank you.
Yes.
we'll be back.
Is there more online?
One additional question online.
We have, yeah, one more question. John, hang on a second. I'll let you talk. Okay,
Thank you. Quick question. We've had a real challenge trying to track down our low water pressure in our house on 74 Cabot, and our water line comes off of Coffins. And I believe, based on everything we've seen, it's probably an old pipe going out. And with the water line not being replaced on Cabot, would it be possible, I know not within your required scope of work, but would it be possible for us to be reroute our water service line out of our house with Coffins Court being torn up and connected to the new water line on Coffins?
On Coffin or Cabot?
Well, you're not ripping up Cabin.
Where does it go to now, John?
It goes out to Coffin. I mean, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Cabot.
It goes out
To
to
Cabot?
Cabot, yes. Old pipe. Actually, it's the second old pipe going out of our house that way.
Is it steel or copper?
It looks to be steel, but I don't know.
Yeah, that's your problem.
Well, I know,
So-
I know I have a problem.
Yeah,
I don't know what the material is.
And
But
yeah, put a magnet on it. If it's.
we've replaced everything in the house and we still have low water pressure. So I'm just guessing that could be it. So what I'm trying to find out is, I know that your water line's coming up to some extent up Coffins Court. I don't know, is it gonna connect to Cabot or is it just gonna be a dead end? I don't know how.
Well,
you
it's
do it.
definitely gonna connect to Cabot Street. We don't like dead end water mains. They
Yeah,
need-
I mean, that would make sense to me. I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds logical. So what I'm trying to get at is, it literally would be like 4 feet from my house. Is it possible that I could,
Maybe.
knowing it's our
We'll look
cost,
at that.
do the connection?
John, we'll look at that when we're doing the engineering study. We'll look at your water line.
That's
We'll
all I
have a
could ask.
recommendation for you at the next meeting.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just a really quick, yeah, just thought of this. As work is being done like right in front of our house.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility somebody's gonna say to us, sorry, you can't get into your driveway?
So again, what I said before is gonna hold true. So we basically give the contractors carte blanche to work in the street from 7 to 4.
Yep.
So generally speaking, what homeowners do is at 6:30, 6:45, they get the car out of the driveway and then move it onto a side street out of the way. So if you want to leave, you can. Now, not every day are they gonna be working right in front of your house.
Right.
But every time you want to leave, they'll be working right in front of your house. But this is, it's a long linear stretch, right? Phil, this is like 1,000-foot stretch at Union Street roughly.
Yep.
So what they have to do is that we're gonna replace, on Union Street, we're gonna replace the water line, the drainage line, and the sewer line. So they had to put these mains in first.
Yep.
And then they're gonna come back and dig in the same spot 15 times. And
We've
you're looking
seen
out
it
your
throughout
window,
town.
you're gonna be looking out your window, and they're like, didn't they dig there yesterday? You're like, yes, we did there yesterday, because just the way that the nature of the utilities are, we have to keep the sewer mains going, we have to keep the water mains going, we have to keep the street drainage going, otherwise we're gonna be very unhappy. So that leads to this whole nature of things where we have to install the main, we have to test it, we have to, in case of water main, we have to chlorinate it, make sure that there's no bacteria. And then we come back and we redig and we hook everybody up to that pipe. You know what I mean? We have to do the same thing with bacteria for the sewer pipe. Right, the sewer pipe goes in first because that's the deepest, then we put the water main in, then we put the drain pipes in, because that's kind of like a layer cake. Sewer, water, drainage, gas, and electricity. So that's the way things are layered under the road. So we have to put things in a certain order, and we have to make sure that everything's going. And it's still going, when we're done for the day, we can't just leave and have no sewer for the night. So that's why you get all these holes in the same spot over and over and over again, doing different things, but we're doing it, especially in neighborhoods like ours, where the houses are so tight. That it looks like they're almost digging in the same spot, but they're really working on somebody else's house, where yesterday they were working on the guy next door. You know what I mean? So that's what you're gonna see, what you're gonna see. It'll be very interesting to you. And I know everything there is to know about road construction in 2 years. Guarantee you. You'll probably be sitting over there with Phyllis.
Yeah. Good, well, yeah, if there's no other questions, I would encourage you, if it's not up now, again, I did look, to sign up on the city's website. We have your emails now, so we'll automatically add you, put them in there. But we will send out the next round of notices when we come back for the second public meeting in the spring.
Great, thank you.
And just so you know, I mean, we start this email chain, right, and we get more and more emails. And then when we're in construction, we actually send out an email blast every week to show, kind of tell you, hey, by the way, this is what we're gonna do this week. And we'll send it to you through that email, so it just kind of helps us communicate. Communication is key.
Do you want to take, I mean, I'm happy to set up a time for the basement check. Do you want to do that now, or should I just call?
Yeah, you should call, just keep it through that.
Christine Berger holds the schedule right now, so
Okay.
she's the one to reach out and
Yeah,
contact
we
with
got
that.
the phone number, we're gonna call tomorrow.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
When you ever,
Thank you very
if you ever have questions, or the DPW, call, we'll talk to you. Whatever you need.
Is it worth pursuing the one-way idea, or is that, because we did once and it was shut down pretty resoundingly.
How long ago did you try it?
6, 7, 8, 7, maybe 7 years.
You know, 5 to 6 years.
10 years ago?
Not that far, not that far.
I don't remember it coming before PPS. Sorry.
Right.
We
been
can
here
be
a long
over
time.
the,
I had here with us.
city council.
Yeah. Yeah, so where should we direct this?
Park and traffic and safety is the appropriate place to send it.
Yep.
So it's, I mean, there's a lot of streets in Portsmouth that could benefit from doing one way.
No way would a fire truck get down their road, but our road, seriously, sometimes the way they're parked, it would be gnarly. Well, they would just plow through the parks.
Yeah, they push them aside.
There was a storm a few years back, and then the school bus couldn't get up Union Street, because the roads were so narrow.
That's probably the year that I took photos and sent. I mean, it's
2015.
It's probably 15.
Yeah, we call that the snub again.
Everything about that.
Yeah.
That was a tough year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I did the same, I came down Coffins toward Union, had to make that turn, and the only way that you can make the turn coming out of there is if all the cars are parked appropriately, you can sort of wiggle your way out, and
Right,
it's a,
swallow,
it's a who wants to be nice enough to let somebody
it's a
through.
quasi Olympic sport.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily
Stephanie, we
even
can probably
just
wrap
during
up
the
this
snow, but
presentation.
to her point, if cars are poorly parked, you're kind of no different than a lot of other roads, you're sort
Sure.
of letting people come
Yeah.
and go, because it's just too tight, but